Starting us off at number 10 is Fire Mountain. In the mid-90s, Fire Mountain was an unbuilt roller coaster that park officials were considering adding to the Adventureland area of the Magic Kingdom. The ride was based on the film Atlantis: The Lost Empire and would have taken park goers to an active volcano located between Splash Mountain and Pirates of the Caribbean. The story of the ride was set in 1916. Preston Whitmore is trying to make Atlantis' existence public and starts offering expeditions to visitors. The vehicles they're in are forced to unexpectedly take a detour through the volcano.
But the whole plan was cancelled due to the film doing shockingly bad and underperforming at the box office. The ride was originally designed to be built to compete with Universal Studios' Islands of Adventure, but after visiting it and basically realizing that it was a mess and no threat to Walt Disney World, they decided to just cancel the whole construction of this ride.
Before we visited them, they're like, this ain't.
They're like, oh, this is our competition.
Yeah.
Never mind. In our 9th spot, we have The Nightmare Before Christmas. I am disappointed that this project never got finished because I'm a huge fan of The Nightmare Before Christmas and Jack Skellington. It's just a classic movie. Is it a movie to watch during Halloween? Is it a movie to watch during Christmas? The answer is, it's a movie to watch during both of my favorite holidays. Like, that's amazing. But anyways, The Nightmare Before Christmas ride was going to be built beside the evil It's a Small World ride at Disneyland. Seriously, that ride is cursed or something. It was going to have guests in a flying coffin help Jack save Christmas. And at the end of the ride, it was going to show Jack and Sally hugging in the snow. How cute. But for some reason, the project was scrapped. However, every year from Halloween to Christmas, Disneyland redecorates the Haunted Mansion ride to be Nightmare Before Christmas themed. So, in a way, we get our nightmare fix, but not in the way that they originally intended.
At number 8, we have Pop Century Resorts. The foundation of the resort had two parts to it, the legendary years and the classic years, and those two parts were connected by a bridge called the Generation Gap. Very literal and ironic, I know, but the legendary years would have represented the 1900s all the way to the 40s, and the classic years would have represented the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. The original plan was for the resort to open in 2001, but then due to construction delays it was pushed back another year. And then 9/11 happened, which plummeted tourism to basically nothing. The opening was then postponed again because there was zero demand for hotel rooms. Construction on the classic years side continued until its opening in 2003, but the legendary years side hasn't been touched since 2001. In 2006, Disney announced they would restart construction on the abandoned side, but that never happened. LOL. In 2010, it was announced Disney's Art of Animation Resort would be replacing the legendary side, but the original buildings still stand. As for the classic years side, we don't talk about that no more.
Making our way down the list at number 7, we have the Food Rocks. Food Rocks was opened in 1994 and featured a musical show with animatronic figures. Kind of like the Chuck E. Cheese band, but more classy in a way and less scary.
I don't think it can be classy in any way.
Well, I don't know, but the Chuck E. Cheese band is terrifying with their
really
evil eyes. The Food Rocks was an animatronic show in the Land Pavilion at Epcot. It opened in 1994 and was all about the importance of eating healthy. The animatronics were different types of food, but with human features. They then would make funny parodies of songs like "Every Breath You Take" was "Every Bite You Take."
That's a great song, festival. Just wanted to put that out there. The vaudeville style show was basically meant to teach kids about the 4 food groups, but was eventually shut down in 2004. But according to Modern Mouse Radio, the whole stage was left intact and is just hidden behind the walls. Even the animatronic figures are said to be resting behind the walls, so while you're queuing up for that flight simulator ride, just remember those singing food items are right there.
Ew. Can you imagine if they just started singing all of a sudden? They're like, "Every bite you take."
Dude, I'd get so scared. I'm like, where's this coming from?
What is this coming from?
Are you hearing that? Like, where is that?
So creepy. In our 6th spot, we have the Beastly Kingdom. The original plans for the Animal Kingdom was supposed to incorporate 3 categories of animals: real, extinct, and imaginary. So the Beastly Kingdom was supposed to be a section of the Animal Kingdom Park that focused on mythological animals. They had plans to have a quest of the Unicorn Hedge Maze, a boat ride based on Fantasia, and even a massive castle home to a fire-breathing dragon. Like, that sounds awesome! And that castle's dragon was planned to be the largest animatronic creature in the whole park. Now, there is no conclusive reason as to why this idea was abandoned, but every year there is new hope that Disney will follow through with this idea.
Coming in at number 5 is Walt Disney's Riverfront Square. Okay, so this project was a huge deal because it was meant to be Disney's second park after the one in California. Now, if you weren't aware, Walt Disney grew up in Missouri, so in 1963 he met up with St. Louis's mayor to talk about the plans. It was meant to be a theme park right by the riverfront area, which worked out since the area was already undergoing renovations due to a city celebration. The park would have taken up 2 blocks and its entrance would have been very similar to Disneyland's Main Street one. Attractions like the Haunted Mansion, Pirates of the Caribbean, and the Western Riverboat ride were all meant to be at this park. Unfortunately, the plans for the park completely fell through in 1965 due to financial and ownership issues. Walt then turned all his focus to the Walt Disney World in Florida, and I mean, it's a good thing he did too. That one's vibing. At number 4 is the People Mover. So this ride was essentially a transport attraction that opened up at Tomorrowland at Disneyland, California back in 1967. Parkgoers would board these small trains that toured around Tomorrowland from above, and as fun as safe as that ride sounds, it really wasn't. A month into the ride being in operation, a 16-year-old guy tripped and fell onto the track, and the oncoming trains crushed him and dragged his body for a few hundred feet before actually stopping. Can you imagine having a death only 1 month into the ride opening? That is not a good track record. And no, that is not the only death the ride caused.
Was that a pun intended?
Yes.
This is not a good track. That was clever. I like that. But seriously, that is terrifying. But that wasn't the reason why the ride was closed. The ride was closed in August of 1995 because the Disney team thought that it was too old school. As a result, it was replaced by the Rocket Rods 3 years later, which then didn't last too long as well. But not to fear, a lot of the pieces of the train from the original ride are still used in other parts around the resort. And the track is still in Tomorrowland, just unused. In 2010, Disney announced that the ride was coming back. But it's been 10 years and nothing has happened, so let's just hope that they get that whole death by ride thing figured out. Yeah. We don't need any more of those.
10 years, I don't think the comeback's happening.
No, it's definitely not. Coming in at number 3, we have Cranium Command. The Wonder of the Life Pavilion had a short-lived life. It opened in October of 1989 and closed in 2007. The pavilion was designed to be educational yet fun. It focused all about the human body. Now, one of the rides at this attraction was called Cranium Command. For this ride, guests were sent on a mission into the human brain of a 12-year-old boy. Yeah, not creepy at all. You were then called a Cranium Commando, and alongside Buzzy, a tiny soldier, you would help complete this mission. Not gonna lie, I've seen footage from this ride and it looks really creepy. So you're inside a theater that is designed to look like you're inside this boy's head. So you're inside his head, looking out of his eyes, seeing what he is seeing. Then it's kind of like a simulator ride where you just watch the story unfold while your chair vibrates and moves to whatever is happening. But unfortunately, this ride was abandoned after having one of their sponsors back out.
Now at number 2 is Discovery Island. This 11.5-acre island is located on Walt Disney World's property and was actually open to guests between 1974 to 1999. Walt bought the island in 1965 and it was initially called Treasure Island. Parkgoers went there to look at wildlife because it was essentially a miniature zoo. You could look at animals like flamingos, swans, and more. Fun fact, the island's facilities were the last known home of the dusky seaside sparrow before it went extinct. Things got ugly in 1989 when Peter accused Disney of mistreating vultures that landed on the island. Disney actually even confirmed this by saying some of the birds died while employees tried to capture them. Officials then charged him with 16 counts of animal cruelty, but they were eventually dropped. The island closed in 1999 for undisclosed reasons, and all of its animals got moved to Disney's Animal Kingdom. The island is still there, just sitting there, abandoned with zero signs of development. Funnily enough, a man went to the island in April of this year during the pandemic. He called it a tropical paradise and had no idea it was off limits. He was soon arrested.
And finally, in our number 1 spot is River Country Park. River Country Park opened in 1976 and was the first water park at Walt Disney World. The park was designed to look like a swimming hole and had fake mountains with water slides. But a lot of tragedy occurred at this park, which contributed to being shut down. In 1980, a boy was killed at the park after getting a bacterial infection from one of the pool's water. The bacteria attacked his brain and nervous system, which then killed him.
I was smiling all throughout she was talking about that death. I wasn't smiling at the death, I was just smiling at something Lindsay did beforehand. I think I'm some sadistic fool. Either way, I digress. Then, just 2 years later, another boy passed away at the park. Sadly, he drowned after coming off of one of the water slides. Like, shortly after the first death, they would have improved things, installed more safety measures, at least something.
I guess not, because then in 1989, another boy drowned there. What's creepy is that their advertisements read, "Bring a swimsuit and a smile. You're likely to wear both out at River Country." More like, bring a swimsuit and a death wish. Like, seriously, it's tragic what happened there.
Oh god. The park then closed its doors in November of 2001, but most of it is still there. In fact, some say that the park is now haunted. People have speculated that the land is permanently cursed with bad luck, which is what makes it very attractive to urban explorers who go there.
We should go there for a future video.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Starting off this countdown, we have the deadly accident. Disney has made the illusion that no deaths or accidents ever happen at their parks. That's a big lie. With thousands of guests coming and going every day, something is bound to happen. And Disney will go to extreme measures to make sure that word doesn't get out about it. One example would be Javier Cruz. In February of 2004, Javier Cruz, a worker at Disney, got dressed up as Pluto and headed out to join the parade. However, the foot of his costume got stuck and the float behind him didn't stop. It ran over him and he died. He had been working there for about 9 years. This was such a tragic accident, but it didn't make news like it should have. Moving on at number 9, we have the unsanitary conditions. So back in the day, cast members at Walt Disney had to obviously share costumes, but they also had to share undergarments. Yeah, up until 2001, each costume had their own Disney-sanctioned undergarments that they would all have to share. That is so gross. But because of this, a lot of workers were passing around scabies and pubic lice to each other. That is highly unsanitary. I'm just glad that that's not a thing anymore. They ain't gotta share that stuff. Moving on at number 8, we have the sexism. Disney has a very sexist past. So a letter from Disney from back in 1938 showed that they wouldn't hire women to work for them. So the letter was addressed to a woman called Mary Ford, who applied for a position on the animation team. In the letter, Disney said, and I quote, "Women do not do any of the creative work in connection with preparing the cartoons for the screen, as that task is performed entirely by young men. For this reason, girls are not considered for the training school." At the time, women were being discriminated against in many ways, but many people were shocked and angered by this letter. Coming in at number 7, we have the cursed ride. Due to its dark history, Disney park workers and others believe that the Matterhorn ride is cursed. First off, this ride is responsible for the most fatal and non-fatal incidents. In 1964, a teen on the ride stood up in the bobsled and died after being thrown out from it. Then at another time, the ride caught on fire, injuring a family in their sled. And another visitor died after she was launched out of her seat and hit by another bobsled. You'd think they would have fixed the ride after the first couple of deaths. But no, they blame it on a curse instead. They should look into the safety of that ride. Clearly, it's not safe. And again, all those deaths happened at the park and still not a lot of people were talking about it. In our 6th spot, we have the deadly fireworks. Back in 2015, a Disney worker died after attempting to launch a firework off of his head. Devin Staples was a 22-year-old Disney employee. He was best known for dressing up as Gaston, but he would also dress up as multiple other characters. Upon lighting the firework, he died instantly. His brother said that there was no rushing him to the hospital. After the firework went off, he claims that there was no Devin left. Now, some say that this was actually an accident. He never really planned to light the firework, he was only teasing about it. Either way, this is so sad and tragic. But obviously, Disney doesn't want anyone to know that one of their workers died on their property while on shift. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with Snow White. In 1937, Disney came out with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which is the first and oldest feature-length animated film released by them. Now, you would think that voicing Snow White would be the role of a lifetime. But no, think again. Adriana Caselotti, who voiced Snow White, actually had her career ruined by Disney. So Disney made sure that besides Snow White, she was never credited for any other work that she was in, and she was banned from doing any other voice work. Why? Because they wanted to preserve the illusion of Snow White. She couldn't even do radio interviews. That's a little extreme, like Disney owned her voice. Moving on to number 4, we have the Lemmings. In 1938, Disney came out with a nature documentary. In the documentary, there's a scene where a bunch of lemmings commit suicide by leaping into the ocean off of a cliff. And Disney claimed that that was normal and part of the animal's migration. They even had a clip in the movie showing the lemmings doing so. But this is entirely false. These animals don't just jump off cliffs in groups and kill themselves. So for this scene, Disney imported a bunch of lemmings and then pushed or threw them off of a cliff. That's not really a happy ever after ending for them, Disney. In our 3rd spot, we have the Ashes. So apparently it's a thing to take your loved ones to Disney World. Not your living loved ones, no, your dead loved ones. And then you sprinkle their ashes all over the park. Believe it or not, but this happens more often than you think. Visitors will bring their loved ones' ashes on a ride and then release them down on Disney World. What about the other people on the ride? Like, all you need is a gust of wind to blow those ashes right into their face. Now, there's one ride in particular that people love doing this on. Take a guess in the comments below. Done? Okay. It's the Haunted Mansion ride. I don't know what it is, but tons of people release their loved ones on this ride. And when that happens, Disney literally has a special vacuum that they use to suck up the remains. Like, they have a protocol in place for when people do this, cause it happens so often. That's so messed up. Maybe don't do that, cause your loved ones are just gonna end up in a vacuum, and then in the trash. Moving on to number 2, we have the alligator attacks. So once upon a time, Disney had a really bad alligator problem. But obviously they didn't want park guests to worry, so they kept downplaying the problem. From 2006 to 2015, 220 alligators had to be removed from Disney World. Then from 2015 to 2016, there was a massive increase of gators at the park. Since Disney is connected to waterways that intersect with lakes and rivers, alligators have an easier access to Disney than they admitted to. Sadly, in June of 2016, a young park guest was killed in an alligator attack. That's when Disney was exposed for downplaying the seriousness of their alligator problem. And in our number 1 spot, we have Debbie Stone. Debbie Stone was an 18-year-old hostess at Disney. However, in 1974, she sadly lost her life while on the job. And her death remains a huge mystery. So Debbie was a hostess for America Sings, which was a musical performance at Disneyland. For this attraction, you would be seated in a theater facing a stage, and after each performance, the theater would rotate. But sadly, during one performance, Debbie got caught between the rotating wall and the stationary stage wall. She was instantly crushed to death. She was found with her body in pieces. Her death was kept a secret, like all the other ones on the list. Disney didn't want the other workers to hear about it, and her friends working at Disney were not allowed to even make a memorial for her. But the mystery remains. How did Debbie end up between the walls? Was she pushed? Did she trip and fall? We don't know. Only Disney knows.
Coming in at number 10, we have Real Human Remains. Back when Walt Disney first opened his Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disneyland, California in 1967, he hated the look of fake skeletons. As he was preparing for the ride, he just thought they simply will not do. Sadly, he did die before the ride opened. Nonetheless, I digress. While we are blessed with good-looking fake skeletons these days, it just simply wasn't the case in the 60s. Instead of going with subpar decorations on one of his main attractions, he decided that he was going to use real real human skeletons instead. The skeletons allegedly came from UCLA Medical Center and were poised to create spooky scenes for riders. It is said that as skeleton props got more realistic, all the skeletons were removed, save from one on a headboard of a bed. Others, including Disney employees, swear that there are still a handful of real human skeletons on display on the ride to this day. Disney, as I said, did die before the ride opened, so maybe one of the skeletons is his, although I pretty much just made that up. Coming into number 9, we have the abandoned theme parks. Disney opened up River Country in 1976 at Bay Lake in Florida. However, it was closed unexpectedly in November 2001, where it sits for the most part in disrepair today. The official line on the closing says that it happened because of the increased popularity of other water parks, although a lot of rumours out there suggest it could be something a little more worrisome. Either way, the location is pretty creepy to look at, right? Imagine going there and visiting all of the overgrown flumes. Also, I wonder what else is living there, or maybe even who. Also abandoned is Discovery Island, which was a small zoo until 1999, and now lays wild and inhabited by wildlife. Okay, I didn't realize this when I was a kid, but there is a really disturbing death scene in a Disney movie. We have the hanging in Tarzan at number 8. I remember the thunder, the lightning and the rain of the scene where Tarzan faces off against the colonial pest that is Clayton. Clayton in some way deserves it. He tries to shoot Tarzan and he pushes Jane to the floor. He pursues Tarzan through the vines, but obviously is nowhere near as adept at swinging than him. Tarzan has a choice to shoot Clayton but decides not to. Unfortunately for Clayton, he ends up taking a few wrong moves and then ends up with a vine around his neck. He falls and then we actually see his corpse hanging. I have no idea how I missed this as a kid. I guess it's a bit like the skull and crossbones in Gaston's eyes in Beauty and the Beast. Disney is very subtle with its horrifying deaths, but they are there. Scary. Coming into number 7, Lilo is Samara from The Ring. That's right, the actress who voices Lilo in Disney's Lilo and Stitch is also the actress who played the evil dead girl ghost Samara in The Ring. So as cute as you want to find little Lilo, know that actually she will drag you to an untimely death at the bottom of a well. Okay, maybe she won't, but you know, that is a crazy diversity in characters for Davy Chase to play. Scarier still, she's now 28 and was recently charged with drug possession in LA. Coming into number 6, Walt Disney haunts Disneyland LA, or so the story goes. Honestly, which is it though? I thought he was cryogenically frozen. Turns out not to be true, but some say that he does indeed haunt the original Disneyland. Back when he was alive, Disney had an apartment above the fire station on Main Street. When he was in residence, it is said that he always kept a lamp burning in the window so everyone knew he was there. When he died, the lamp was switched off. His apartment remains practically untouched today and the lamp still sits in the window, although initially it was extinguished as a mark of respect. Eerily, it seems that the lamp would turn itself back on occasion. One day, a staff member was cleaning the apartment when she heard a voice that said, "I'm still here." From that day on, Disney's lamp keeps on burning in the window as a mark of respect and acknowledgement for his ghost. Coming into number 5, Disney has regularly been accused of being anti-Semitic. So Disney wasn't always the friendly animator and creator of magic that we all thought him to be. He had a very severe side, and not all of his work was the stuff of fairy tales. Not only was he thoroughly against communism, so much so that he brought people into the House of Un-American Activities, he also had a deeper, darker side. Honestly, the calling out the communists is one thing, but he was also accused of being wildly anti-Semitic, and beyond that, a supporter of the Nazi Party. 1 month after Kristallnacht, a turning point in Nazi Germany, Walt Disney welcomed a prominent Nazi film director into his studios. He welcomed her. Disney often stereotypes Jewish characters. Look at this from the Three Little Pigs. The big bad wolf disguises himself as a Jewish character, which, I mean, I know it was a different time, but oof. Also, check out what Daffy Duck is up to here. Oh my god. Whatever statement Disney was making, is it appropriate to dress a kid's cartoon character up as a Nazi? I'm gonna go with no. Coming into number 4, we have cancer.
So the original Disneyland in Anaheim, California opened in 1955, a time when lead as a building material was a-okay. Now, 63 years on, we're not so gung-ho with the cancer-causing element. There are excessive levels of lead in commonly touched objects in Disneyland, including the brass doorknobs at Minnie's house, the fixtures and fittings in Cinderella's castle, the sword in the Sword in the Stone attraction. If you go to Disneyland in California, you will likely come across a number of signs that warn the magical kingdom is home to chemicals that cause cancer and birth defects, as well as reproductive harm. Scary. Coming into number 3, we have the princess who assisted murder. In 2008, Rachel May Buffet was a former Disney princess and found guilty of helping her fiancé cover up a murder. The pretty blonde ex-princess played characters including Ariel at Disneyland in Anaheim, conducting meet and greets with children and joining in parades. Despite her humble day job, Buffet was an accessory to murder when her lover Daniel Wozniak murdered Samuel Herr and Julie Kibishi. This happened in 2015, and apparently he was aiming to steal $62,000 from the army veteran in order to pay for their wedding. Now, Wozniak has been sentenced to death, but the disgraced princess will spend just 3.5 years in jail for being an accessory to murder. Back to Disneyland at number 2, one ride takes you to hell. Disney doesn't make them like you used to. Back when Disneyland opened in 1955, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride was one of the first attractions to open. We all know Mr. Toad from The Wind in the Willows, but it seemed the speed-loving amphibian and all that ride is attraction are destined for hell. On the ride, revelers are sent through a demon's jaw into the fiery pits of hell, which, considering the ride is in the so-called kid-friendly Fantasyland, I'm a little bit shocked. In case you are looking to confirm Mr. Toad's status, his gravestone can be found in the pet cemetery at the Haunted Mansion. Speaking of the Haunted Mansion, finally at number 1 we have the Ashes Dump. It seems that Disneyland is a very popular spot for people to request their ashes be spread. I kinda get that, like, it is the happiest place on earth and everything. But what I do find strange is within that, people seem to really want to have their ashes spread in one spot more than others. The Haunted Mansion. Is it so that the departed can dance in the ghost ball with the rest of the undead? Maybe. One woman was spotted trying to offload ashes at Disneyland in 2007. Now apparently the Haunted Mansion ride is haunted by the ghost of a little boy who managed to have his ashes successfully spread there. He's also been spotted on the nearby Pirates of the Caribbean ride. True story, or simply urban legend?